we'll go one at a time. Just we'll go back and forth. That's cool, Legs.
No, it's not cool. Fuck you. No, no.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to Top Fives with Don Sill. I'm your host, Don Sill, and we got another great top five in store for you today. It's the top five most important punk bands of all time. Punk rock is one of my most favorite musical genres, and there's so many great bands to choose from. But I had some help from a guy who's been there from the very beginning, the legendary Legs McNeil. That's right, Legs McNeil, the guy who wrote Please Kill Me, the guy who was there from punk rock's birth all the way through, the guy who helped name the genre punk rock. Yeah, Legs McNeil.
I usually just hang out and drink a lot and meet famous people and do interviews.
And as always, folks, please remember to subscribe, like, and comment below. We want to know what your top five is and what your thoughts are as well. But without further ado, let's get right to it. Me and Legs McNeil with the top five most important punk bands of all time. All right, we are here with the legendary Legs McNeil. Legs, how are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you doing? Happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. This is it's so great to have you doing this with me. Such an honor. You are a true pioneer of the punk rock movement, so to speak. You've been there since the beginning.
What do you do, Legs?
Well, I work as resident punk.
What does that involve?
I usually just hang out and drink a lot and meet famous people and do interviews.
You gave the genre its name, punk rock, essentially.
Well, it had been used. Lenny Kaye had used it, and Greg Shaw had used it, and Greil Marcus had used it. A bunch of people had used it, but it wasn't unified under. It wasn't kind of codified under this one scene, where John Holmstrom, who was the editor, the genius behind punk, said, I want to call it Teenage News, which I thought was a stupid idea, you know? Okay, it just sounded so lame, but what I didn't know was that it was from an unreleased New York Dolls record.
We're going to wrap it up with this song that's an anthem for a generation, and I'm not quite sure what generation, but it's called the Teenage News.
Right.
And I said, why don't we call it punk? But see, I didn't read the music rags at all. John read them all, or John read Lester and all these people. And I was basically a skinny little punk. You know, that's what people would call me all my life. Plus, it's what they called the bad guy on TV. They couldn't say, you know, you goddamn blah 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 blah
Right.
blah blah. You know, so they came up with, you dirty punk, you're going down forever. You'll be in jail for the rest of your life.
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
They still use it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely stood the test of time. I don't know if Teenage News would have had the same impact, even though, like I said, it was a New York Dolls song, but it became a legendary magazine out there on the scene, informed so many people about the punk, what was going on with the bands, because they weren't getting that stuff mainstream back then.
No, well, there were, and mainstream media really put punk down. You know, they didn't try to understand it, or, you know, it was just, it was so limited. There was no internet. There were the three networks and a few local news channels that loved. I mean, if they needed to do an anti-story on something, they would choose punk.
What is punk? Why is it different than the Woodstock generation or beatniks, or is it?
Well, I think it's different because it has no social value.
Right.
You know, come and interview a bunch of idiots, you know, and say, you want your, I mean, there was an episode of Quincy where they go and someone I think died in the mosh pit, you know, because they were, you know, and Quincy got incensed and said, we have to stop this, you know. You know.
And she finds her daughter burning cigarette holes in her arm, shredding her clothes to bits, taking pills, and locking herself in a room listening to that violence-oriented punk rock music.
No way out of the rain. No shortcuts, baby, no fast lane.
Yeah, back in the day, punk rock was definitely scary in a way. I was a kid. I just turned 50, so when this whole thing started, it was pretty much I was a little kid, and it was scary in the sense that it was real, it was gritty, it was in the streets, being the part, is that what you would say defined punk rock back then? Was this rebellious, gritty street?
I thought it was a kind of a joke, I was so skinny and could never fight. I think I got into 2 fights with Holmstrom, not with him, but with right. And someone punched me and I went down and John was saying, get up. And I go, why? He's just going to punch me again. I'm just going to go down again, So, I was not a tough guy at all, never was, make love, not war. But, I was a lover, not a fighter. But, and that's where the term legs came from, and John said, and you can wrestle Handsome Dick Manitoba, the Dictators, and we'll have a wrestling contest, and we'll call you Muscles McNeil. I said, no, you're not going to call him. That's And he went through, Arms McNeil, and then he said Legs McNeil, and I thought that because I was born with one leg longer than the other, and they did an operation where they cut 2 inches off my femur, and I couldn't walk for a year.
Wow.
And so I thought legs. Oh, okay, it'll be legs. I like legs. And I always liked gangster movies and kind of film noir and pulp.
Yes, yeah.
Pulp magazines and you dirty rat and stuff like that.
Come out and take it, you dirty yellow-bellied rat, or I'll give it to you through the door.
Right on. And also, nobody ever forgets a guy named Legs. Being a part of the punk rock from the beginning, and you watched it evolve, and it crossed over into different genres. You got your hardcore and pop punk and all stuff. But ultimately, what's your opinion on the evolution of punk rock? What it is today? Are you happy with it? Is it what you expected would be?
I'm happy that it keeps evolving. Rock and roll is sort of dying out right now. So, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because kids would rather listen to synth or whatever, But I think there's an opportunity for it to reemerge if a good enough band can capture the imagination of the world like Nirvana did or any of those. But it wasn't up to me to like it. I was not a big fan of hardcore, but I was happy that it seemed like it kept evolving. You know?
I wear rat shoes. I pay rat stews. I make rat balls.
It was that you could be anything or do anything you wanted. You could reinvent yourself in any way that you were capable of, which is what the design was. It was because at that time there was only 2 ways to be: a hippie or a jock,
right,
or a nerd. So basically 3. So it was so limiting,
right,
the possibilities. And punk was to say, hey, because most people I've talked to throughout the years, and the fans of Please Kill Me, say I felt like such an outsider. I didn't relate to anybody, and then I put on an Iggy record, or I put on a Velvet Underground record, or put on a Patti Smith record, and I suddenly felt, I found my place, and I relate to this, It gave you an opportunity to find friends and people, like-minded people, and so you could form your own community, which is what makes me the happiest about this is that, you know, people didn't commit suicide, and, you know, or they committed suicide slowly through punk. But
Right, yeah.
you know, but they I mean, if a lot of these school shooters who probably feel the same way had discovered, you know, the Ramones or Iggy or whatever, the Dead Boys, you know,
Right.
they probably wouldn't have shot all these kids, you know.
Yeah, because you're able to get that angst out of your system, or get
Yeah.
it out, whether it's at home just rocking out, or even in a mosh pit, or at the
Yeah.
clubs, or whatever. So yeah, I think I always say, like, I feel like you know, punk rock is they're truth tellers in a way, and also it is good for those type of kids to find an outlet, you know, in
Yeah.
through the music. This is the top 5 most important punk bands. Very difficult list, but why would you say punk rock is important?
For just those reasons that
Yeah,
you know, that have made people feel. What's amazing about Please Kill Me, the book that I wrote with Gillian McCain,
great book.
Is that people in records, you know, the lonely girl would come in and be depressed, and I've heard this story so many times, and the record store owner would just write, "Go get this," and he'd write, "Please kill me," you know. I don't know how many times people have told me, "Please kill me, save my life." And Please Kill Me has sold more records than I think any rock and roll book ever has. Because all these people who were, you know, like suicide and television and you know, people didn't know who they were because they didn't get mainstream exposure, you know?
Right. Yeah. That's what was great about that book, and that's what's great about Punk Magazine. All the stuff you touched is that you helped so many people discover punk rock music, the genre, and you gave it a credibility that it may not have gotten had you not been there from the beginning.
I don't think I gave it credibility. I think I had credibility already.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
just good stuff. It was just trying to expose people to it, you know. So I think that was what we did. But you know, come on, Raw Power and the Stooges already were great, and the Velvets, you know, come on.
Yeah.
Velvet, yeah. I would say counting down my top 5 would be the Velvet Underground first. The Velvet Underground were just so incredibly important. They not only, you know, kind of invented punk, they invented goth with Nico. They did so many different styles. And if you put on the first Velvet Underground with Nico album today, it sounds like it was made last week. It sounds so new. I'm always amazed how new it sounds, you know.
It's funny because a lot of people that say that they are fans of Velvet Underground are fans of the bands that were inspired by the Velvet Underground, and then through those bands they went back and discovered Velvet.
Velvet,
yeah. You know, guys like Lou Reed. I mean, they just carry that punk rock ethos, that vibe that they are on their sleeves.
But Lou wouldn't have been the Velvet Underground without John Cale, because John Cale knew nothing about rock and roll, you know.
Right.
He was this avant-garde, you know, guy from Wales, you know, who, you know, and he added such strange sounds that you'd never heard in a rock and roll record before that were so great, you know.
You got the style that it takes. You got the style that it takes.
think the pairing of the two, I mean, you can hear it on later when they reunited for Songs for Drella, the album about after Andy Warhol died, when they did the tribute kind of album to Andy. You can hear the magic of the Velvets kind of coming back. Of course, Moe Tucker and Sterling Morrison are not on it, but they should have been, but Sterling unfortunately died.
Right.
You know. But so I would say the Velvet Underground is my number one favorite punk band of all time. And you still don't hear them on the radio. I have Sirius, and I listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage all the time. They never play the Velvets. You never hear them.
Yeah, that's weird. And
it's like, why doesn't anyone play the Velvets?
It's weird how some bands just don't get touched like that, even like legendary outfits like the Velvet Underground.
And also the Velvets were kind of just reporting on everyone else in the 60s were hoping for a better world. The Velvet Underground was just kind of reporting on what happened.
Right.
Standing on the corner, suitcase in my hand, this is what I'm doing today, They were just narrating their lives.
When I put a spike into my vein, then things aren't quite the same.
Heroin, it's my life, it's my wife, they didn't say it's good or bad. They were not morally judging themselves. They were kind of just reporting, which is I as a journalist really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I still appreciate.
I love that. Yeah, because they're telling about their lives, and for some people, they're telling about a life that they never knew existed. You know what I mean? Like if you're a kid back in the 70s. In the suburbs, and you get a Velvet Underground record and you hear these stories, you're like, holy shit, this is actually happening, that people live like this, So I think that is important in that regard, and I do agree Velvet Underground is an amazing pick. Definitely
so that's my number one. We're not going to go. I'm dyslexic, so we can't go in reverse. We have to go.
Okay.
We have to go from the number one and then count it down.
Okay, fair enough. I'll start with my number one. My number one. Sometimes when you go through these lists, it's the cliches, but I think there's cliche for a reason. And my number one is the Ramones. And it's mainly because they're heavily credited with inventing the genre. Now that they might have been influenced by other bands, maybe the Kinks or something that came before them, but the Ramones definitely, this a bunch of kids from Queens, they came up, they had this attitude, this chip on their shoulder, this kind of simple 3-chord rock that made a statement, and basically created their own scene out there at GB's and all that stuff. And I just think they're extremely important, because without the Ramones, I mean, would we have this genre? Yeah, probably somehow, some way. But I think I wouldn't ask for a better band to be the anchor of the movement of the genre.
I agree with you, but I would put them at number 3. I'd put Iggy second, because they were heavily influenced by Iggy and the Stooges, and the main, the just now singing Now I Want to Be Your Dog. I think they took it a little bit further. Now I want to give some glue. Now I want to do this. Now as Richard Hell said, that they didn't write a positive song until now I want to, I don't want to go down to the basement. I don't want to walk around with you. There were such great songs. But I would put them at 3 because you cannot ignore the Velvets and the Stooges.
Right, right.
You know.
So yeah, so Iggy Pop for you at number 2. I think Iggy Pop's another one. Was he Detroit based, right? And
yeah. Produced by John Cale from the Velvet Underground.
Right.
Was set up by Danny Fields. You know, that was Danny Fields' great inspiration.
Now you've been interviewing Iggy since the beginning, right? And
not really. No, I kept missing Iggy when he came to New York. Everybody was kind of coveting Iggy, and they were having parties with him and stuff. And I was like, what? You know, they were keeping Iggy as a secret still. They wanted to have them at their loft party, you know.
Right.
You know, so I kept missing him, you know.
Back then, what was? I know Iggy, like, he had a kind of a dangerous stage vibe. He would self-mutilate, and his music was just really aggressive. And I love Iggy Pop, and he is another one who wears it on his sleeve of who he is. But what do you think that made him stand out above all the rest? Because there was a lot of bands like MC5 and you know, these kind of heavier bands emerging at that time. And what made Iggy stand out?
Well, Iggy had, before he started the Stooges, he had gone to Chicago to become a drummer with Sam Lay, and he hung out in the black jazz scene or the black blues scene in Chicago, you know, which is quite fascinating for a kid just out of high school to, you know, go to Chicago and knock on Sam Lay's door and say, you know, you're my idol, and I want to. And Sam Lay let him sit in on some of his sessions, and I think he saw and he smoked his first joint with Sam Lay, because Iggy was kind of a straight kid. He was kind of wore cashmere sweaters and had penny loafers, you know, with the pennies in them, and he was also a really bad asthmatic, so he couldn't. You know, he told me, I always wanted to take drugs, but I couldn't because I was asthmatic. You know, but when Sam lit up a joint, you know, we were standing in by the river that they turned green for St. Patrick's Day every year. I forget what it's called, but Sam said, "Well, why do you white boys try to copy me? Don't you have anything inside of you that needs to come out?" You know, and Iggy thought, I could go back and I could write my own simple blues songs about, you know, my life, you know, and that's where you got the idea to start the Stooges, you know, from smoking a joint with Sam Lay, you know.
I'm hanging around that same old scene. My girlfriend Betsy is just Fontaine. There's nothing better for me to do. I'm living on dog food.
You know, and I love that kind of black and white crossover that keeps happening, you know.
Yeah, right. Yes, with music in general. Yeah.
So to answer your question, why did Iggy become bigger than the MC5? The MC5 were kind of more traditional, where Iggy, I think, took more chances. You know, I mean, in the beginning, they invented their own musical instruments. You know. They used a vacuum cleaner and a blender with a contact mic in it, you know.
Oh, so, yeah.
You know, so they were kind of experimental from the very beginning, and I think Iggy never lost that experimental vibe. Where I think the MC5 were a little more rigid in their blues-based rock and roll, you know. So that's why I'd say Iggy's number 2.
Get into the car. We'll be the passenger. We'll ride through the city tonight.
Excellent. Great. Number 2. Right now we have an all-star lineup here. For my number 2 again, I'm going with, you know, what some might say is the obvious, but again, it's for a reason. And it's The Clash. I think that The Clash, you know, they brought you know, political awareness to their music, and still had that same kind of angst and heaviness about them. They kind of came after like the Pistols, but were like a smarter version of the Sex Pistols, you know. And I think that they helped evolve punk rock into, you know, kind of the next level, the next stage.
They did. They most certainly did. Yeah, I'd agree with that, but I would put them at 4 or 5 for me, because I was there. I was with Joey when we got the first Clash single, White Riot. Joey had this little portable record player, you know, that you bought at like Kmart or where, you know, Woolworths, you know.
Right.
You know, and we put the single in. You had to have the little disc, you know, little.
Oh, you put it in.
Yeah, and put the single down, and it was White Riot. And I said, they're just copying you. Which, if you listen to White Riot, they basically are just copying the Ramones in the beginning.
Right.
So I was a little disappointed with them, but Johnny Ramone always thought that the Clash were their competition. You know,
I can see that.
At one time, he said to Joe Strummer, he said, you know, they were crossing paths or playing the same gig, and he said, we cut out 2.5 minutes. And Joe Strummer said, what? And he said, we cut out 2.5 minutes. And Joe said, what are you talking about? He said, our set, we got it down, cut it down by 2.5 more minutes, you know, because people have things to do and they have places to go, and, you know, that's what was great about the Ramones, is that they wanted to get on. There was never any warm up. You know, they got on 1, 2, 3, 4, and they took off. You know, and you went with them. And I think the Clash learned a lot from the Ramones, and they were also there when they played Dingwalls, you know, on July 4th, 1976, when Holmstrom and Jed Dunn, the publisher of punk, were fighting. It was when the big ships came into New York. It was the 200th centennial. I sat on Joey's front, on Arturo actually, which was right around the corner from CBGB's, on his front stoop, and just waited for Joey to come back from England. And Joey came back excited. Legs, you wouldn't believe it. And I was like, well, who cares? It's fucking England. No one gives a shit about England. You know, I had no conception of what they had done, you know.
Right.
You know. Yeah, I was just missing Joey so we could hang out and drink and pick up girls together, you know.
There you go. That's what it's all about. So, who do you have for your number 3?
Well, no, we have the Ramones. You know,
Velvets,
the Velvets, Iggy and the Stooges, the Ramones. I think 4 would be Patti Smith.
Yeah.
You know, because she just she went to places especially female singers were not going, you know, and I think she widened the gap even further, you know. And she was funny, and she was very, very smart about her choices in rock and roll, you know.
Yeah, she definitely, like you said, was smart about her choices, and I think also, you know, she showed that women can do it too, and then you know what, like after her, you know, Wendy O and women like that, you know, really going for it. You know, like Joan Jett maybe comes from the Patti Smith line, perhaps.
I think Joan was more influenced by the Blondies, you know. But she was hanging out with Debbie a lot, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
It must have been cool back in those days in the beginning in CBGB. I mean, you would hang around there and see all these bands in their infancy. And just, did you know it was magic when you were watching this happen?
Oh, yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I was very... But you weren't going around like, this is magic. You were going around like, this is great. Let's get another beer and let's go talk to that girl over there and, you know, see what she's up to, you know?
Right.
You know, so it wasn't, you didn't walk around self-consciously. In the very beginning, I was just laughing a lot and just happy to be there, you know?
Right, yeah.
Happy to be invited to the party.
I have another. I know we kind of already have our 5, but I want to ask you.
We have 4.
Oh yeah, we have Velvet Underground, Iggy Pop, Ramones, Patti Smith, and then the Clash. But we could interchange these out. So because I wanted to get your thoughts on Bad Religion. Because I think Bad Religion came out in like a second or third wave of punk rock bands.
Second wave.
Yeah, and they kind of brought that pop punk sound and led the way for NoFX and Green Day and all those SoCal bands.
Yeah.
And so I think that they're important in that regard because of that. I don't know if they're so much about the message, but I think the sound, and also responsible for really helping to bring it to the mainstream.
I think after the New York scene, you know, it goes to California definitely with Black Flag, even though they're from Washington, they kind of ended up in the Circle Jerks with Keith Morris, you know, and
right,
Red Cross and all those early hardcore bands, you know,
right,
were finding their way, you know.
Yeah, because for a little while the Washington scene was popping with Bad Brains and all those bands, like Black Flag, but then they all went to the LA scene.
Yeah.
And then the other one I want to talk to you about to see if they deserve to be on the top 5 is the infamous Sex Pistols. You know,
yeah. Well, you just for Johnny Rotten and Steve Jones guitar. I mean, everybody thought that what's his name had played on it. They gave him credit for Steve Jones guitar. Who's that great guitar player? I asked him. I said, "Did you?" He said, "No, I had nothing to do with it." Everyone always says that I was the guy. I forget his name. I'm sorry, it's too early in the morning for me.
No, I understand. I can't draw on a blank as well.
I would put the Sex Pistols before the Clash. I put the Sex Pistols after Patti Smith, and then the Clash. So it would be the top 6.
Yeah, because I think with the Sex Pistols, tell me if I'm right here. So I always thought or assumed that the Ramones invented punk rock and CBGB's really spawned the punk rock movement. But then I feel like Johnny Rotten kind of gave it its fashion. It's the spiky hair, the torn shirts, the putting pins in their ears and stuff, and and the attitude, the kind of fuck you middle finger attitude.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, or what's your take?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I am an anarchist. Don't know what I want, but I know how to get it. I want to destroy it. Possible, cause I wanna be fucking anarchist.
And then you combine the New York and the England, and I think then that's how you get the LA kind of.
The Clash and the Sex Pistols and the Damned too, because the Damned were already together. The Sex Pistols were just getting together when the Ramones played. They were already together.
Okay.
Played July 4th, 1976. The Clash weren't, and Johnny Ramone told the Clash, "Listen, just you don't need to wait any longer. You'll get better as you play. Just fucking get out there and play."
Right, right.
And so they did, So Johnny Ramone really launched the Clash.
Can rock the hot sun, up on the lovers, up on the lovers.
So here's our top 5. So far,
our top 6.
Our top 6. Our top 6 right now. At number 6, we have the Clash. At 5, the Sex Pistols.
Yes.
At 4, Patti Smith.
Yes.
At 3, the Ramones.
Yes.
At 2, Iggy Pop.
Yes.
And the number 1 most important punk rock band of all time is the Velvet Underground.
Yes. Yes.
That is an excellent list. Honor to do this with you, Legs McNeil. Thank you so much.
I'm no longer with PleaseKillMe.com. I'm launching my new site next week, which is called Legsville, where Legs McNeil's mind lives.
Love it.
For people with great taste.
So it's Legsville.com?
Yes, Legsville.com is coming soon.
And everybody, if you're a fan of punk rock music, you should already know who Legs McNeil is, and also definitely check out the book, Please Kill Me, and all his other books. Please Kill Me it's just great. I actually took the kind of the template that you did with Please Kill Me, and I tried to do my own with stand-up comedy interviews that I've done.
Yeah.
And and I sent it out, and they actually wrote back, said this is you're copying Please Kill Me style.
Yeah.
So I was all right.
I'm also going to be teaching a course in Zen and the art of the narrative oral history. So you can link it on the site if you want to go for the 10-hour course. It'll be $750, and I'm going to help you with whatever your narrative oral history is.
Legs, this is truly an honor. Thank you so much for taking time out of the morning here to
Thanks for doing it.
Man,
it's fun.
Yeah, you're the best, and through the years I've learned so much about the music through you, whether you realize it or not. You've inspired me in many ways, so thank you, sir.
Well, thank you for the nice compliment. I appreciate it.
Yes, indeed.
And
Take
have
care.
A great day. Yeah.
You too.
Okay.
Legs McNeil, everybody. Legsville.com.
Okay.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's the top 5 most important punk bands that me and Legs McNeil came up with. Hope you liked it. And remember, everybody, let us know your top 5 and your thoughts. Did we miss anybody? Did we overlook somebody? Should we have added somebody else? Should we have made it a top 7 or a top 8? Let us know. But anyway, we'll see you again next week.